Welcome to the seventh episode of the Hungarian History Podcast. I am Szántai Gábor. In our last episode, we followed the Ottoman Wars from 1366 to the death of King Matthias in 1490. Today, we are stepping into the stormy years between 1490 and 1526, the road to Mohács. I was tempted to break this topic into three parts. The story is complex, and the Battle of Mohács alone deserves deep focus, not to mention the mysterious death of the king. But I decided to stay on course and keep my original goal, to give you a clear picture of the Ottoman Wars. Still, I won't skip the fascinating details. I can't wait to dive deeper into Mohács in the next episodes. Between the death of King Mátyás in 1490 and the Battle of Mohács in 1526, Hungary saw countless heroic battles. On the southern frontier, brave commanders held the line. Prince Korvin János, the king's natural son, Lord Báthory, General Kinizsi, Voivod Szapolyai, and the Croatian hero Peter of Borislaw. They led outnumbered troops to victory again and again. Many garrisons made their last stand. They didn't fall easily. The Ottomans paid a heavy price, suffering great losses. And they took brutal revenge, burning villages in their wake. Dead is Mátyás, justice is gone. That old Hungarian saying was born in 1490 after the king's death. Mátyás had conquered lands and dreamed of saving Christendom. But after he died, the dream faded fast. He had tried to secure the throne for his natural son Korvin János, gave him wealth, titles, power, made his generals swear loyalty. Did they keep their oath? Not even close. Young Prince Korvin was Hungary's biggest landowner. He had 30 castles, 47 market towns, and 1,000 villages. The second richest man was Szapolyai István, with 18 castles, 4 palaces, 17 market towns, and 240 villages. But the crown didn't go to Korvin. Instead, the Jagelló dynasty took power. First came King Ulászló, Vladislav II, who ruled from 1490 to 1516. Then his son Lajos II, who would later die at Mohács. Ulászló promised peace, not war. He offered Bohemian, Polish alliances instead of taxes. That's what the barons wanted to hear. But Korvin didn't give up. At just 17, he tried to claim the throne by force. It ended on July 4, 1490, at the Battle of Bónfield. And who crushed him? None other than Kinizsi Pál, the loyal general of King Mátyás, backed by the heavy cavalry of Queen Beatrix herself. Yes, Queen Beatrix, widow of King Mátyás, and maybe one of his murderers. It was she who helped Ulászló take the Hungarian throne. She gave him money. She wanted one thing, to stay queen, no matter the cost. Ulászló even married her in October 1490, but the church saw through it. Cardinal Bakóc Tamás deliberately made errors in the paperwork. That way, he could later declare the marriage invalid, and he did. In 1500, the Pope annulled it. Beatrix was sent back to Italy, humiliated. Meanwhile, Prince Korvin had the Holy Crown and the royal treasury. But after his defeat, Kinizsi took both and handed them to Ulászló, the foreign usurper from Prague, who arrived with 15,000 men. Let that sink in. Without Kinizsi's betrayal, Ulászló would never have been king. One more note. In the summer of 1490 the Turks, seeing the chaos, raided deep into Hungary, reaching Várad. Kinizsi had to drive them off. In 1491 Ulászló made peace with Maximilian of Habsburg. He renewed the old treaty of 1463. Its core message was simple. If Ulászló died without a legal heir, the Habsburgs would inherit both Hungary and Bohemia. Most historians agree. During the Jagellonian rule, Hungary went from a strong, centralized kingdom under King Mátyás to a weakened, divided realm. Ulászló too earned the nickname Dobře Ulászló, meaning very well. Why? Because they say he approved everything the barons demanded. But this reputation is misleading. Yes, he was seen as passive. Yes, his court was full of internal power struggles. But the truth is more nuanced. History painted him a weakling and his son as an idiot. But not everyone agrees with this dark image of Ulászló. Some historians see him differently, as a clever, tactical ruler, a man who knew when to compromise. They argue he brought about a second renaissance in Hungary, a peaceful, prosperous era. No endless wars, no crushing taxes like under Mátyás. The country flourished. It is true, at first the barons tied his hands. They limited his power, but over time Ulászló fought back, quietly, patiently, and regained much of his royal authority. History, it seems, hasn't been kind to him. His weakness. In 1491 they captured Koszorúvár Castle, a gateway to the key fortress of Jajca. The next spring they attacked Nándorfehérvár, now Belgrade, and Szabács and Jajca. But one man still stood in their way, old General Kinizsi Pál. He repelled the assaults and even lifted the siege of Szörény in 1492. Early in 1493, the German-Saxon troops from Szeben defeated the Turkish raid into Transylvania. But that September, the Bosnian Pasha struck Austria and returned with a large booty until Croatian Bán Derencsényi ambushed him at Ugdina. The Bán is a rank. It means duke. The Turks retaliated brutally. Derencsényi was killed. That same year they raided the Barcaság region. But again, Kinizsi struck back, attacking Szendről with 10,000 men. In 1494, the Turks returned in force, launching a major assault on Nándorfehérvár Belgrade. Raids spread through Slavonia and the Szerémség region. Kinizsi answered with 14,000 troops, striking deep into Serbia and Bulgaria. But it was his final campaign. During the siege of Szendről Castle, the great general suffered a stroke and died. Even though major attacks were stopped, the fighting never truly ended. In name, there was peace, a 3-year treaty between King Ulászló II and Sultan Bayazid II. In reality, the small war still burned along the southern borderland. Prince Korvin János, who finally became loyal to Ulászló, held key military posts. In 1499 he scattered Ottoman troops at Sebenikó, though he failed to capture Bistrica castle. In August 1500 he struck again. His forces raided the region around Szendről Castle, deep on the lower Danube. Meanwhile, Croatian allies pushed all the way to Mostar and crushed a larger Turkish force. In October 1500, Chief Captain Shomyōja led 14,000 men on the fierce raid. They destroyed 600 villages in Serbia. Thousands of prisoners were taken back to Nándorfehérvár, Belgrade. Success kept coming. In November, Corvin broke the siege of Jajca castle. He killed 4,000 Ottoman soldiers in the battle. Then he pursued the fleeing enemy and raided deeper into Serbia. In March 1501, Corvin attacked again, this time in Bosnia. He defeated the Turks at Blata, while Croatian vice-bonds, dukes, Kožulic and Žarko launched parallel raids along the Bistrica River. The Ottoman Empire was growing stronger. In June 1502, they besieged Jajca again. But a Hungarian army led by Tárcai János saved the castle once more. Yet the enemy had enough men to raid the Szerémség, the Sirmium region, and Pozsega county. Enough was enough. In October, Voivod Szentgyörgyi of Transylvania joined forces with Chief Captain Somi, Bán Kanizsai György of Belgrade, Nándorfehérvár, and Bán Tárnok Péter of Szörény county. They hit the Balkans hard, burning Kladovo, Vidin, and Nicopolis. At the same time, Prince Corvin attacked Bosnia and joined their army at Sarajevo. The Hungarian counterattacks had an effect. In February 1503, King Ulászló II and Sultan Bayezid signed a new peace treaty, this time for 7 years. But trust was low. In 1504, Hungary and Venice formed an alliance against the Ottomans. The Venetians promised 30,000 ducats annually to support the defense. The same year, Prince Corvin suffered a defeat in Croatia and died in October. When the fragile peace ended in 1509, the Ottomans tried to take Karánsebes castle in Temes county, but failed. Their 1511 attempt to capture Knin in Dalmatia also ended in defeat. With the Ottomans busy in Persia and along the Mediterranean, another truce was signed in September 1511, this time including Venice and Poland. But peace didn't last. In 1512, the Ottomans defeated the forces of Török Imre, the Bán of Nándorfehérvár, Belgrade, near Szentről Castle. That summer the Turks advanced along the Sava River. They took Srebrnik, Tesan, Sokol, and Blagai. But later that year the tide turned. In November, Komes Bátori of Temes county crushed the enemy at Illadia in Krassó county. And when the Bosnian Turks attacked Jajca, they were forced to retreat. Dark clouds gathered in 1513. Cardinal Bakóc Tamás failed to become Pope. The Medici were richer, and Giovanni Medici, later Pope Leo X, claimed the throne of Peter. The same year, the Ottomans tightened their grip on Dalmatia. They took Nutjak, Sinj, Csesin, and Ver. Fierce battles followed. In August, Croatian Bán Petar Berislav relieved besieged Blinj and won at Dubica. At Nándorfehérvár, Belgrade, Sárkány Ambrus crushed another Ottoman force. Meanwhile, Voivod Szapolyai János led a fiery raid deep into Bulgaria. But then came a new kind of disaster, one from within. Pope Leo sent Cardinal Bakóc home with orders to launch a crusade. Obviously he wanted to get rid of him. Money was promised, but no gold ever arrived. Still, King Ulászló declared a war in April 1514. A massive peasant army rallied behind Dózsa György. But there was no food, no pay from the Medici Pope, and so the army turned, not against the Turks, but against their own lords. Cardinal Bakócz could not stop them anymore. The largest peasant uprising in Hungarian history was unleashed. It burned through half the kingdom, years before the Ottomans would do the same. To crush the revolt, Szapolyai and his rival, Báthory, joined forces. They put it down with a terrifying brutality. But the Turks didn't rest. They tried and failed to take Nin castle again. In May 1515, Voivode Szapoly János of Transylvania launched yet another raid into Bulgaria, hungry for fame, glory, and Ottoman blood. The Turks answered in kind. They ravaged Croatia and the Adriatic coast with cold precision. Then they built a new stronghold right in front of Zeng castle. Croatia fought back. Ban Petar Borislaw launched a counterattack in February. But he stood alone. The Slavonian estates refused him aid. We belong to Hungary, they said, not Croatia. Even as the empire bled, unity failed. In April 1515, the Hungarian lords united. Szapolyai, Báthory, Török, Paksi. They marched on Zsarnót castle that the Turks dangerously built close to Nándorfehérvár, Belgrade. But Sinan, the Bey of Szendrő, crushed them. Paksi died. The army was scattered. All equipment lost. At the same time, King Ulászló was fading. A stroke had left him a shell of his former self. He knew the end was near. Desperate to protect his son's throne, he turned to the Habsburgs. An alliance was forged, sealed in marriage. Young King Lajos, already crowned over Hungary, Bohemia, and Croatia, married Mary of Austria, granddaughter of Emperor Habsburg Maximilian. She was older, wiser. It was a political union, not a romantic one. At the same time, Mary's brother Ferdinand married Ulászló's daughter Anna. 2 weddings, 1 deal. Many believe that this was the moment Hungary's fate was sealed into Habsburg hands forever. In 1516, King Ulászló died. His 10-year-old son Lajos II became king. A boy on the throne. Easy to control, easy to manipulate. The barons took over, and Hungary began to unravel. The kingdom's finances collapsed. Treasurers and vice-treasurers lined their pockets. The powerful Fugger banking family had their claws deep in the royal treasury. And Queen Mary of Austria, the Habsburg wife of Lajos, was accused of lavish overspending. Meanwhile, at the borderland forts, the soldiers waited for their pay. It was late or never came. Their morale broke. Their loyalty crumbled, and the gates to hell creaked open. And yes, the Turks were not done. They were just getting started. In May 1517, the Bosnian Pasha, Mustafa, came for Jajca castle. He laid siege, but this time the Croatians were lucky. Hungarian reinforcements arrived just in time. They crushed the attackers. The Pasha himself was slain. A year later they came for Belgrade Nándorfehérvár. They knew how vital it was, but again they were driven back, bloody and broken. The defeat was so severe that in September 1518 the Ottomans offered peace. But don't be fooled, the burning didn't stop. The plundering didn't stop. By now, 17.4% of Slavonia's homes and properties were gone, wiped out since 1495. Hungary was bleeding, and while it weakened, the Ottoman Empire doubled in strength since the days of King Mátyás. 1520, a year that changed everything. That was when Suleiman rose to power, and with him a new era began. Unlike his predecessors, he looked west, not east. His gaze was fixed on Europe. The war season opened in May with a heavy blow. Croatian Ban Petar Berislav was trapped and killed at Korenica, a terrible omen. Meanwhile, Hungary was falling apart from within. After the brutal Peasants' War of 1514, the nobles had united only to reimpose medieval serfdom, but now the aristocrats and the common nobility turned against each other. The kingdom was fractured. Two great factions, two powerful leagues, fought for control. One led by Palatine Báthori István, who leaned towards Habsburg Mary. The other by Voivod Szapolyai János of Transylvania, beloved by the lower nobility. They were competing to have greater influence over the monarch, and while they battled over power, the real threat was closing in. In May 1521, Sultan Suleiman began his first campaign against Hungary. His target was Buda, but the south's strongest strongholds, Nándorfehérvár, Belgrade, along with Zimoly and Szabács, had to be taken first. The siege of Nándorfehérvár, Belgrade lasted for 66 bloody days. At one point, Suleiman almost gave up. Almost. But then came betrayal. A Serbian woman sneaked out, a traitor, and revealed the fortress' weakest point. And that was the end. The walls fell. The Ottomans stormed in. Suleiman renamed the fallen stronghold Dar al-Jihad, House of the Holy War. The garrisoned it and left it heavily packed with soldiers. The gateway to Hungary was now in Ottoman hands. But he wasn't done. His real target was Buda, yet he couldn't reach it, not yet. That would take 20 more years. For now, his forces rampaged through the Szerémség region. But Hungarian troops, though too weak to save Belgrade, Nándorfehérvár, or Dar al-Jihad, were strong enough to block the advance. They stopped the raids. They slowed the tide. As it was, hearing the peril of Nándorfehérvár, King Lajos tried to act. He planned to unite his forces at Zenta with the Transylvanian army and the Croatians. Together they might have matched the Ottomans in strength. He dreamed of taking back Szabács, of retaking Belgrade. But fate had other plans. At Mohács, disease broke out. A pestilence swept through the camp. Soldiers fell, nobles fell, even the king fell ill. The army collapsed, scattered like dry leaves in the wind. And with the loss of Belgrade, or Dar al-Jihad, the southern border broke wide open. Hungary was exposed to the enemy. Long ago King Mátyás had warned, if Nándorfehérvár falls, the kingdom won't hold. Now it was gone, and the warning rang louder than ever. Panic hit Buda. The barons looked for someone to blame. Why was the southern defense unfounded? Who had stolen the kingdom's money? Fraud, corruption, bankruptcy. That was the smell of the realm. Yet, King Lajos was coming of age finally. But however hard he tried to change things, his hands were tied. In 1522, Wallachian voivode Radu rebelled against the Ottomans with Hungarian support, but he was defeated by March. In response, Transylvanian voivode Szapolyai launched a summer campaign, defeated Bey Mohammed of Silistria at Grumezi, then attacked Nicopolis and restored Radu to the throne. The Ottomans struck back quickly, defeating Radu in 2 battles and forcing him to flee to Transylvania. Szapolyai returned, won 2 more engagements, and reinstated Radu once again. At the same time, Pasha Hüsrev of Bosnia failed to capture Klissa castle. The Ottomans were strong but not unbeatable. General Tomoripal was focused on rebuilding the southern defense, especially around Pétervárad castle, meant to replace the lost Nándorfehérvár. In March 1523, Bey Bali's assault on Pétervárad was repelled with heavy losses. A month later, Radu fled once again to Transylvania while Bosnian troops laid siege to Klissa and Krupa. Still, Tomori's efforts to rebuild the borderland from nearly nothing began to yield results. The Battle of Szávaszendemeter in 1523 marked a major Hungarian success. Bárdi István, leading a much smaller force, defeated the combined Ottoman armies of Bey Bali and Pasha Ferhad in a fierce 3-day engagement. The Hungarian hussars destroyed the enemy's river fleet and inflicted heavy losses. 7,000 Ottomans killed compared to just 700 Hungarians. Using classic hit-and-run tactics and ambushes, Bárdi's troops isolated and destroyed the 12,000-strong Ottoman forces piece by piece, especially as they struggled to cross the rivers. In September 1523, Tomoripal continued reorganizing the Hungarian river fleet along the southern border. The Ottoman threat grew. In December they captured Ostravica castle from Croatian Ban Jan Karlovic. Early 1524 saw another Ottoman attack on the Dalmatian coast and the siege of Klissa castle, but Captain Péter Krušič reinforced Klissa by sea and defeated the attackers in April. The Ottomans kept pressing and tried to take Szerény castle at the lower Danube in May, June, but they failed. However, in September, Bey Bali of Nándorfehérvár, now Dar el Jihad, finally captured Szerény castle. By April 1525, Ottoman forces reached the walls of Jajca castle, defended by Bán Péter Keglevics. The siege lasted until June, when Kristóf Frangepán arrived with 12,000 men and lifted it. In August, Serb refugees brought news of Sultan Suleiman's planned attack to Hungary. This came well before Suleiman's envoy arrived in Buda to negotiate a false peace. The Sultan was already set on conquering Hungary. After the Hungarian queen's men murdered the envoy, the Ottomans had a clear pretext to declare war. The ongoing small-scale conflict continued. Turkish raiders burned the area of Titel Castle on the Tisza River, and in October Tomoripal's troops raided near Szabács Castle. Titel Castle withstood another siege in March 1526, but was eventually abandoned after repelling Bey Bali's forces. In May, the Liga of Cognac was formed against the Habsburgs, including Pope Clement VII, Florence, Venice, France, England, Milan, and the Ottomans. Meanwhile, the Fugger banking house undermined King Lajos' efforts to secure loans to pay his soldiers. Instead, they supported Charles Ferdinand's elder brother, who became Holy Roman Emperor with their money. To repay the huge debt, the Fuggers insisted on control over the Hungarian mining towns that supplied Europe with silver, gold, and copper. Though King Lajos had banned the Fuggers, he was forced to restore their mining rights. This couldn't happen again. The Habsburgs needed resources to pay their debt back, and Lajos was in their way. Poland signed a peace treaty with the Ottomans and couldn't provide help. Bohemian troops were slow to arrive. Szapolyai was allegedly misled, and the Transylvanian army was far from the main royal forces. Croatian reinforcements under Kristóf Frangipane also arrived too late. Habsburg Mary of Austria effectively sent her husband Lajos to his death, and her brother Ferdinand gave no real support, only a few outdated and cracked cannons. King Lajos knew what awaited him when he left Buda with only a small force. The Hungarian nobles were slow to join, but by the time they reached Tolna, the army had grown to about 25,000 men, respectable by European standards. It included disciplined Bohemian pike and shot infantry and strong heavy cavalry. Tomori couldn't save Petervárad castle, which fell to the Ottomans, but his veteran borderland troops, the same men who had shattered Suleiman's vanguard, now joined the king near Mohács. Their earlier victories made them bold. They pressured Lajos. "If your majesty doesn't allow us to attack, we will go home." And on an extremely hot afternoon, August 29, 1526, the Hungarian army's weapons glittered in the sun, while across the field more than 60,000 Ottoman troops were deploying in silence, slightly covered by a small mound. Soon the field would run red. But what happened next would echo through history. And next time, the blood-soaked fields of Mohács, the knight's final charge, the long-last stand of the pike and shot units, the king's mysterious death, and how one battle changed Hungary forever. After that, we will enter the age of heroes and sieges, the epic castle wars from 1526 to 1591, where Hungary refused to fall. For now, this has been the Hungarian History Podcast, the only English language show dedicated entirely to Hungary's past. If you enjoyed this episode, follow and subscribe on Substack to support this work. Thank you for keeping Hungarian history alive. This was Szántai Gábor. Goodbye. Sziasztok, a viszonthallásra!